AITA for exposing my girlfriend after she gave our savings to her ex? I'm Liam, 38, and after 6 years with Megan, I honestly thought we were past the kind of relationship drama people warn you about in your 20s. I was her boyfriend, her emergency contact, the guy she called when her car made a weird noise, and the person she said she wanted to build a real future with. We were living an ordinary adult life in the US, nothing flashy, nothing dramatic. Bills, grocery runs, Sunday mornings, shared calendars, and quiet talks about what came next. The future fund started as a practical thing, but somewhere along the way, it became emotional. We named the account Future Fund in the banking app like a joke, but we both treated it seriously. It was supposed to cover wedding costs if we decided to stop talking around marriage and actually do it. It was also emergency money, backup money, and maybe the first step toward a house someday. I was careful with money, but I wasn't cheap. Megan knew that. I liked going out to dinner. I bought stupidly overpriced coffee when I felt like it. I sent flowers when I wanted to make her smile. But I believed shared money required shared consent. That wasn't a control issue to me. That was the whole point of calling something shared. Our life had routines that made me feel safe. On Sunday mornings, we made pancakes and argued over who made them better. She always added too much vanilla and pretended that made hers gourmet. I kept a spreadsheet for the future fund, and she teased me for color-coding it, but she also liked seeing the balance climb. Sometimes she would stand behind me while I updated it and rest her chin on my shoulder. "We're actually doing it," she would say. Slowly, I would say. Slow is still doing it. That was what made the whole thing hurt so much later. The money wasn't just money. It was proof that we were planning the same life. Tyler's name started coming up again about 2 months before the transfer. Tyler was Megan's ex, and I knew about him. They had dated years before me, and from what she had told me, it had been messy but not abusive, toxic but not dangerous. He was one of those people she described with a tired sigh, like, he wasn't a bad person. He just never got it together. At first, I didn't think much of it. Megan mentioned that Tyler had reached out because he was going through a rough patch. He was behind on bills. He was embarrassed. He didn't have anyone. He was drowning. That was the word she kept using. One night, we were standing in the kitchen after dinner. She was rinsing plates while I wiped down the counter, and she said, "I feel bad for him. He sounds like he's at rock bottom." I said, "That's rough." She glanced at me like she expected more. I added, "I mean it. That's rough. But I hope you're not making yourself responsible for fixing him." She frowned. "I'm not fixing him. I'm just being a decent person." I didn't want to be the insecure boyfriend who banned contact with an ex. I've seen that guy. I didn't want to become him. So I tried to be measured. "I'm not telling you who to care about," I said. "But I need to be clear about one thing. Our shared money is not part of it." She turned off the faucet and looked at me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, if you want to help him emotionally, that's between you and your boundaries. If you want to use your personal money, I might have feelings about it, but that's your money. But the future fund is ours. I'm not comfortable with any of that going to Tyler. Not a loan, not a gift, nothing." For a second, she looked offended. Then her expression softened. She dried her hands and touched my arm. "I hear you," she said. "I won't touch our savings. I'm not stupid. I didn't say you were. I know. I get it. I'm just worried about him. That's all." I believed her because I wanted to believe her. Also because after 6 years, you should be able to believe your partner when they say they understand a boundary that clearly. A few weeks went by. Tyler's name kept showing up in little ways. Megan would be typing on her phone, then flip it face down when I walked into the room. Not every time, but enough for me to notice. She would say things like, "He just needs one person to believe he can get back up," and "It's sad when people only care about you after you've already fixed everything." I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself there was no reason to make her feel monitored. I had already said what I needed to say. She had agreed. Then the bank alert came. I was unloading groceries from the car when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I had a carton of eggs in one hand and a bag cutting into my fingers. I remember that clearly because my first thought was that if I dropped the eggs, I was going to be annoyed for the rest of the night. The notification was from our bank. Large transfer completed from Future Fund. I stood there beside the open trunk and stared at the screen. For a second, I thought the app had glitched. I set the eggs down in the trunk, opened the banking app, and logged in so fast I mistyped my password the first time. The balance loaded. My stomach dropped. Almost everything was gone. Not a little, Not a few $100s. Almost the entire account. The number that used to make me feel secure now made the inside of my chest feel hollow. I checked the balance twice. Then I checked the transfer history. There were multiple outgoing transactions. Some through Zelle. One larger bank transfer. All within a short window. All authorized from the account Megan and I both had access to. I carried the groceries inside quietly. Megan was at the kitchen table with her laptop open, acting normal. Too normal. She looked up and smiled. Hey, did you get the oat milk? I put the bags on the counter. Megan, why is there almost nothing left in the future fund? Her smile disappeared, but she didn't look surprised. That was the first answer before she even spoke. Liam, she said, already tired, like I had started a fight she had been preparing for. Please don't do this right now. Where is the money? She closed her laptop slowly. I helped Tyler. I heard the words, but my brain refused to accept them in order. You what? He was drowning. He had people calling him. He was behind on everything. He was scared, Liam. I couldn't just watch that happen. I stood there with a grocery bag still around my wrist. You used our future fund. It's money we can rebuild. After I told you I wasn't okay with it. Because you would have said no. That line sat between us like a confession she didn't realize she had made. I took the bag off my wrist and set it down. Yes, I said. I would have said no. That's what makes it a decision we were supposed to make together. She pushed her chair back and stood up. You're acting like I bought a purse. I helped a human being. I'm not asking why you felt bad for him. I'm asking why you used our money after I said no. He needed help. So did our future. She rolled her eyes, but her eyes were wet. Do you hear yourself? You're making numbers more important than a person. That was the moment I realized this was not only about the transfer. Megan was testing whether she could redefine betrayal as compassion and make me feel ashamed for objecting. I didn't yell. I wanted to. My hands were shaking, and there was this ugly heat climbing up the back of my neck. But I didn't yell because I knew if I did, the story would become about my tone. So I lowered my voice instead. You don't get to turn consent into a character flaw, I said. She looked away. From now on, I added, anything about money goes through text or email. That made her snap her head back toward me. Wow. So now you're treating me like some kind of criminal. I'm treating this like something serious. Because it is. That night, she slept with her back to me. I barely slept at all. The next morning, I started gathering what I had legal access to. I didn't touch her private phone. I didn't guess passwords. I didn't go through accounts that weren't mine. I took screenshots of the bank alert, the transfer confirmations, the account history, and the timestamps. I exported the shared account statement. I saved the confirmation emails that went to the shared finance folder we both used. The transfer pattern bothered me immediately. It wasn't one clean emergency payment to a creditor or landlord. It was split up. Zelle here, bank transfer there. A few vague notes, nothing that looked like a direct bill payment. One note said, catching up and clearing my head. When Megan came into the kitchen, I had my laptop open. Why did you split it up? I asked. She poured coffee without looking at me. What? The transfers. Why multiple transactions if this was one urgent bill? Because that was the easiest way. Easiest way for what? For helping him. Did every dollar go to urgent debt? She put the coffee pot down too hard. That isn't the point. I stared at her. Actually, it is exactly the point. No, the point is you don't trust me. I trusted you until you emptied an account after telling me you wouldn't. She gave me that look people give when they're not trying to understand you anymore, just trying to survive the conversation without admitting anything. By the end of that day, the story had already started spreading. Rachel, one of our mutual friends, texted me first. I get that you're upset, but Megan made it sound like Tyler was in a real crisis. I thought you were more compassionate than this. I read the message 3 times before answering. Did she tell you she used our shared savings after I clearly told her I wasn't okay with it? Rachel didn't answer for nearly an hour. When she did, all she wrote was, she said it was complicated. That became the theme. It was complicated. Megan was emotional. Tyler was desperate. Money could be rebuilt. Compassion mattered. Everyone had something to say about my reaction, but almost nobody seemed to know what I was actually reacting to. At a casual friend dinner that weekend, the whole room felt different. Nobody said anything directly at first, but people avoided my eyes. Megan sat beside me looking fragile and disappointed, like she had brought me there as evidence. Aaron, My friend noticed I was quiet. You good? He asked under his breath while we were getting drinks from the kitchen. I looked toward the dining room where Megan was laughing too loudly at something Rachel said. Not really. Yeah, he said. Kind of figured. Dinner was awkward in the way adult dinners get awkward when everyone is pretending they're not discussing the thing they all came to discuss. Someone made a comment about how hard things were for people financially. Rachel said, "Sometimes people show you who they are when someone else needs help." Megan sighed and said, "I guess some people think compassion has a spending limit." A couple of people went quiet. One person stared down at his plate. I set my fork down, but I still didn't take the bait. Funny, I said calmly, how everyone knows I'm angry, but nobody seems to know what I actually said no to. Megan gave me a warning look. Liam. I looked at her. What? Not here. You brought it here. She pressed her lips together and looked away. The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. I was being socially cornered into accepting the role she had written for me. Cold, controlling, obsessed with money, punishing her for having empathy. 2 nights later, the humiliation became something sharper. We had a shared tablet that mostly lived on the kitchen counter. We used it for recipes, streaming music, and checking the shared calendar. Megan had been using it earlier, and she must have left one of her chats open. I was making dinner, cutting onions, when the screen lit up with a message preview. Tyler, he really let you move that money? That's embarrassing for him. I froze with the knife in my hand. I didn't open the chat. I didn't scroll. I didn't touch the message. I just stood there staring at the preview until the screen dimmed. When Megan came into the kitchen, I said, "Why does Tyler know enough about our account to laugh at me?" She blinked. What? I pointed at the tablet. She picked it up fast, too fast. It's just Tyler being Tyler. He jokes when he's stressed. He is mocking me with money I helped save. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic? Your ex thinks this is funny. He's embarrassed. He deflects. He doesn't sound embarrassed. He sounds proud. She hugged the tablet to her chest like I was the one who had crossed a line. You were watching my messages? A preview popped up on the tablet we both use. I didn't open anything. You know that. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she said. You're turning ugly about this. I almost laughed, but there was no humor in me. No, I'm turning clear. There's a difference. After that, I stopped discussing anything important out loud unless I followed it up in writing. I paused my automatic contributions to the future fund. I moved my personal savings away from anything connected to shared plans. I canceled a couple of upcoming expenses tied to wedding research and future deposits we had been considering. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, just protection. When Megan noticed, she was furious. So now you're cutting me off? I'm not adding another dollar to an account you treat like a private rescue fund. You are punishing me. I'm preventing a repeat. She hated that answer because it was too practical to turn into cruelty. The more I looked at the records, the worse it got. The shared email folder had transfer confirmations and a forwarded screenshot Megan had apparently saved because she thought it helped her case. Tyler had written something about 2 nights away before reality hits again, and Megan had replied with a heart. Another note mentioned upgrading the phone so work stuff doesn't fall apart, which might have sounded reasonable if it hadn't come after she told me the money was for immediate debt collectors. When I asked her again, did every dollar go to urgent debt? She gave me the same answer. That isn't the point. By then, I knew it was. The hardest part came during an argument that started in the laundry room. I was folding towels because I needed something to do with my hands, and Megan came in already crying. I don't know how you can be this cold, she said. I really don't. Cold is hiding a transfer and letting your friends call me selfish. I didn't let them do anything. You told them a version where you were the rescuer and I was the obstacle. Because that's how it felt. I put a towel down. Megan, you took money from a future we both built and gave it to your ex. Not your brother. Not a medical bill. Your ex. After I said no. She wiped her face angrily. You don't understand what it feels like to prove to someone you're still there. The room went quiet. She realized what she had said almost instantly. That's not what I meant. I looked at her, and something inside me cooled down. Proof. I meant as a person, as someone who cares. No, I said. You meant proof. She walked out, and I let her go. Later that night, she sent me a long email. I think she meant it to sound mature. It had phrases like emotional context and larger picture and compassion in action. She attached screenshots and copied parts of a thread with Tyler, probably thinking it showed that Tyler hadn't manipulated her directly. But one reply from him was still visible near the bottom. "Don't blow up your life over me. I never asked you to make this romantic." I sat at the kitchen table and read that line until the words stopped looking like words. That was the deepest cut. Not because Tyler rejected her. I didn't care about Tyler's feelings. It hurt because it showed Megan's version of the story had been false from the center. This wasn't clean emergency compassion. This was emotional loyalty to an ex, dressed up as virtue, paid for by our shared future. And Tyler didn't even want the responsibility of what she had done for him. The next day, I spoke with a legal professional. I needed someone outside the mess to tell me what was realistic. I brought the statements, the screenshots from shared spaces, the confirmation emails, and the account details. The answer was sobering. Because Megan was an authorized user on the shared account, the bank was probably not going to treat it like a simple unauthorized transfer. Morally wrong and easy to reverse weren't the same thing. There were possible civil options depending on how much I could document, what our contributions looked like, and whether she acknowledged what was taken, but there was no magic button that would put the money back. That made me angry all over again, but it also helped. It forced me to think clearly. I didn't need revenge by chaos. I needed a record, boundaries, and a way out. I sent Megan a written repayment request for my portion of the transferred money. I kept it calm, specific, and boring. The amount, the date of the transfers, the fact that I hadn't consented, a request for a written response, and a repayment plan. She called me within 2 minutes. I let it go to voicemail. Then she texted, "Are you serious right now?" I replied, "Yes. If you want to talk about rebuilding anything, start by acknowledging what you took from me." She didn't like that. Instead of answering the repayment request, she escalated the victim story. Her older sister Denise invited us to dinner the following weekend. I knew what it was before Megan even told me. Denise had always been protective of Megan. She wasn't cruel, but she was used to cleaning up Megan's emotional messes and calling it support. Megan framed it as just dinner, but her tone gave her away. "Denise is worried about us," she said. "Does Denise know what happened?" "She knows enough." That's exactly what worries me. The dinner was at Denise's place. Rachel was there too, plus Aaron and a couple of others. It had the false warmth of a room where everyone thinks they're being subtle. Plates were passed. Someone complimented the salad. Someone asked about a show none of us cared about. Megan sat stiffly beside me, waiting. It didn't take long. Rachel said, "I just think sometimes people show you who they are when someone else needs help." Aaron shifted in his chair and looked down. Denise said, "Money is terrible to fight over. It makes people forget what matters." Megan took a breath, like she had been invited onto a stage. "I never thought Liam would punish me for helping someone who was at rock bottom," she said, voice trembling. "I know he's upset, but I did what I thought was right." There it was again. The performance. The missing middle. The part where she turned a joint financial betrayal into a moral test I had failed. I put my glass down. "You didn't help someone with your money," I said. "You emptied our shared savings after I told you I wasn't okay with it." The room went still. Megan whispered, "Don't." I looked at her. "No. You made this public when you told everyone I was selfish. I'm just adding the part you left out." Rachel's face changed first. Denise looked between us. Megan said, "You're embarrassing me. You embarrassed me when you let people think I was punishing you for being kind. You are being vindictive." "No," I said. "I'm being accurate." I didn't read out long private conversations. I didn't dump her messages for entertainment. I only showed what mattered. I opened my phone and showed the bank alert. The transfer confirmations. The account nickname, Future Fund. The timestamps. Then I showed the visible message preview I had photographed on the shared tablet after it popped up, Tyler mocking me. "Tell Liam thanks. Not every guy funds another man's comeback." Then the other one. "He really let you move that money? That's embarrassing for him." Nobody spoke for a few seconds. I said, "The guy she gave it to wasn't grateful. He was laughing at both of us, except I was the only one who didn't know I was the joke." Megan's face had gone pale. "You had no right to save those. They appeared on a shared device after you brought this fight into shared spaces. And the bank records are from an account with my name on it." Denise put down her fork. "Megan," she said carefully, "I need one straight answer. Did Liam agree to the transfer?" Megan stared at her plate. It was an emergency. Denise's voice sharpened. That is not what I asked. Did he agree? Megan looked at me like I had betrayed her. I almost said something, but I stopped. For once, she needed to answer without me filling in the silence. She finally said, no. Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. Aaron leaned back and let out a quiet breath. Denise looked angry now, but not at me. That is not the same thing as helping someone with your own money, she said. Megan started crying. I was trying to do the right thing. With someone else's money, Denise said. The dinner fell apart after that. Rachel came to me near the door while Megan was in the bathroom. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Megan made it sound like you were punishing her for helping someone. I didn't know she used both of your money after you said no. I nodded because I didn't have much left in me. Thank you for saying that. Aaron texted me later that night. You should not have had to absorb that quietly. I should have said something sooner. It didn't fix anything, but it helped more than he probably knew. Megan didn't speak to me on the ride back. When we got inside, she stood in the living room with her arms wrapped around herself. You humiliated me, she said. I set my keys on the counter. No. I stopped protecting the version where I was the villain. They all looked at me like I was a monster. Maybe they looked at you like someone who hadn't told them the truth. She cried harder, but I was past the point where tears could erase facts. The next few days showed me exactly what Tyler was. Megan tried to get him to help explain. Then she tried to get him to agree to repay the money. Then she tried to get him to at least admit in writing that he had received it for urgent debt. He became vague immediately. Don't make this bigger than it has to be. Then, I never asked you to risk your relationship. Then, I'll pay it back when I can, but I'm not getting dragged into your relationship fight. When she pushed harder, he stopped answering for longer stretches. The same man who had joked about me funding his comeback suddenly didn't want his name anywhere near the consequences. I would like to say Megan had some clean realization and apologized in a way that made everything simple. She did apologize, eventually, but it came wrapped in excuses. I panicked. I thought you would forgive me once you understood. I didn't think Tyler would act like that. I thought helping him meant something. That last one told me we were done. I said, I can replace money. I can't replace the part of me that trusted you with our future. She sat on the edge of the couch, eyes swollen, and whispered, so that's it? 6 years. I hated that question because it made ending the relationship sound like the betrayal. Like I was throwing away 6 years instead of refusing to pretend she hadn't. You made a decision that big without me, I said. Then you hid it. Then you let people judge me for reacting. 6 years is exactly why I can't stay. I moved into practical mode after that, because if I let every conversation become emotional, I knew I would get pulled back in a fog. Communication stayed limited to finances, logistics, and repayment. I kept the written trail. I followed the guidance I had been given. I didn't insult her online. I didn't post screenshots for strangers. I didn't call Tyler, even though part of me wanted to hear him squirm. Megan moved through anger, apology, blame, and bargaining in waves. One afternoon she said, I don't know how you can just turn off love. I said, I didn't turn it off. You made it unsafe. That was the closest I came to saying the whole truth out loud. Packing up the small signs of our planned future hurt more than I expected. Not in a dramatic, movie scene way. It was worse because it was quiet. I deleted shared calendar reminders for venue tours we had never officially committed to. I archived the wedding budget spreadsheet. I moved the folder labeled Future Fund into a records folder because now it was evidence, not a dream. I found a sticky note Megan had put on my laptop months earlier after I updated the spreadsheet. It said, Future Us says thanks. I stood there holding that little square of paper for a long time before throwing it away. The money still matters. I won't pretend it doesn't. It represented years of discipline and a future I thought we were building together. But the money wasn't the deepest loss. The deepest loss was knowing Megan could make a decision that big, hide it, let another man laugh at me, and then shame me for calling it betrayal. Rachel apologized again later, this time in a longer text. Denise told Megan she needed to stop calling it compassion when it involved money that wasn't only hers. Aaron checked on me without making it weird. Tyler, from what little I heard, never produced a real repayment plan for Megan and never stepped up when things got serious. Megan lost the version of the story where she was the kind one and I was the cold one. She also lost the fantasy that Tyler saw her sacrifice as meaningful. Once repayment, accountability, and public truth entered the room. He treated her like a complication. I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. But I also felt clean in a way I hadn't felt since the bank alert. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't hacked anything. I hadn't lied. I had simply stopped allowing her half-truth to stand in for the whole story. The last conversation we had in person was calm. She asked if there was any way back. I looked around the room we had filled with ordinary routines. The kitchen where we made pancakes. The counter where the tablet had lit up with Tyler's message. The table where I had read his line about not making it romantic. Everything looked the same, but none of it felt the same. No, I said. Not for me. She nodded like she had expected it, and still hoped I would say something else. I told her all future communication needed to stay in writing unless it was an emergency. She called that cold. Maybe it was. Or maybe it was what boundaries look like after someone uses your trust as permission. Money can be rebuilt with time, work, and discipline. Trust that was broken on purpose can't be rebuilt by demanding the betrayed person pretend it was kindness. And love doesn't require anyone to finance their partner's unfinished past. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.